everybody. This is Patty. Welcome to the Witching Hour. Yes, the hour of the day when the veil is thin and magic happens. This week we have some beautiful magic for you. Witchy author and dear friend Jenny C. Bell. Thanks for coming back on the show, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me again. I love your show. Like I'm an actual fan, so I like listen and watch, and so it's fun to be on here too.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Well, honored to have you. And some people also might recognize you from the Witches Movie Coven. You are one of our regular witches in the coven to come talk about movies on Wednesday night with us. And very awesome and a very nice educated because you even said in last week you studied film and stuff. So you are much more informative and educational than I ever am. I just go, I like it or I didn't like it. I don't know why. So this is great.
I didn't mind it.
I
That's
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. Yeah, I was entertained. But anyway, so let's get back to which you are a practicing witch. Part of you. We've talked about your story a little bit, but we will go there. But what I'm excited is you have a brand new book coming out next week, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called Divergent Witchcraft: An Inclusive Approach to Making Magic. And I'm really excited because even though it's my second book, it's actually the first book I wrote. Because sometimes people, if you don't know about like authors and editing and stuff, things don't always come out in the timing you think. And so it's my very first book that I wrote. And it's exciting to me because there are several beginner books out there, but I think this is a different and newer approach. And I think it'll speak to like a larger audience. Because there's a lot of things I've done to accommodate people with different kinds of learning issues or different ways of thinking or different ways of processing. So I've really tried to make it inclusive.
That is beautiful. And I'm sure it is going to do well because divergent itself, it's a kind of a buzzword right now. It's in the thing, divergent, divergent. It's a word that I don't know up until not very many years ago. I'd never even heard before, let alone I didn't know what divergent meant. And now it's part of our conversation. So why did you choose to do this? Was this just, did you see the need? Is
Yeah, so my background is as a school teacher. I no longer am. I was a school teacher for 13 years and I taught the different spectrums of special education. So I taught like special education with students with like severe learning disabilities, but also what was referred to as GATE and or as gifted and talented education. And those kids, some people don't realize, are also considered special education because you as a teacher have to really challenge these students. I would hit these kids in like middle school and I'm like, they're smarter than I am. And I'm an adult. What am I supposed to do with them? And so I had all this training and did all these things. And so when I was thinking about, okay, I want to write like a beginner's witchcraft book, but there's a lot out there. So how can I make it like a little bit different, a little more modern, I would say? And so I really started looking at these kind of guidelines, newer guidelines for teachers, to be more as inclusive as possible with all the different kind of ways that we understand people process information. And so I use those guidelines to really chunk the information in this book. So like when you flip through it, there's not like long chapters. It's like all these little subheadings, all these little exercises, all these journal prompts to really get the reader to interact and kind of go, "Oh, let me take some time to process this."
That's beautiful. And that's kind of good for modern living right now anyway, in life in little chunks. So if somebody is like a newer beginner, they want to learn something about the craft, where I recommend it, just I knowing you and your magic. But what if they go, I don't know if I'm not sure I know what divergent means. I don't know if I am or not. That doesn't mean that's not for them, right? You're just going to get in the easy to
Yeah, that's why we chose the word divergent instead of neurodivergent. Because if we say neurodivergent and you look that up in like a dictionary, that's going to be specifically like people on the autism spectrum, people with ADHD, people with anxiety, OCD, lots of, clinical kind of diagnosis. And sometimes not. Sometimes they just feel like they are. And so we, as like an editing team, we're like, what's another word we can use? And we're like, divergent. It just means that you're thinking maybe a little different than others. And I would argue that like all witches really are divergent because most of us grew up in like one path and then diverged into witchcraft. So we tried to make it more universal. So yeah, I would say You're right, everybody's processing like that because of social media, like, we all like our information really in, like, succinct little bits of information at a time. Just the way we learn is different, I would say, from, like, 10 years ago even.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's like, yeah, even on my book, I see yours isn't too large. I get intimidated by big books now. It's like, I don't have the time, I don't have the focus, I don't have the so it's like, I like to write little. So, uh, so if somebody again is just looking, I have a lot of new practitioners or curious people. So, how did your path come along? Is this something you've always been a part of who you are? This magical path, this witchy path? Is it something that developed?
Yeah, so, I mean, I was raised Catholic or born Catholic because you don't really have a choice. But and I think Catholic I talk about this sometimes that, like, Catholics do witchy things and witches do Catholic things. Like, there's a big connection, especially in, like, folk magic, like Italian folk magic, for instance. They work with, like, saints and Mother Mary and, like, all of this kind of, what we would consider to be Catholic kinda information, angels. And so I always felt like a magic in church. Like, I liked the smell of the frankincense and myrrh. I really loved I felt my angels with me. I felt like such a deep connection when I would pray even as a child is like something is, really listening to me, like there's something there. I definitely had some like little kind of spirit ghost experiences as a child that didn't scare me. It was more like, "Oh, that's normal." And so my mom, she was a numerologist. Like she would do numerology charts for people. She's really big into astrology. And so there's always this kind of like, this is just part of life. This is like normal in our house.
It's beautiful. So, and then again, you said you're a teacher or was a teacher. So, when did you decide to write? Just to get your information out there? Because
Yeah.
I know how hard it is to step into writing a book.
Yes, thank you for yes, it it is very hard. So at one point my health kind of took a turn. I actually had someone read my natal chart for astrology and say, "I'm surprised you taught as long as you did because your nervous system was never meant to really take that on." I was one of those teachers that was like always sick. I got every virus that went through the school. It was like, and then when I became a mom, it was like even harder because the kids are at schools. And so my health took like a real turn after I had my son. He was my second child. And I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And then at the same time, I ended up at a workplace that was not good. It was not a good situation for me. There was not nice people. And so it was like mental health was not doing well, physical health was not doing well. And I had always wanted to be a writer. I had this like idea that I would be like Stephen King and I would like be an English teacher by day and writer by night. But it takes a lot of hours to actually write, and so that was not gonna happen, and so my husband and I looked at, like, our budgeting situation, I was like, "In realistically, can I stop teaching and try something else?" And he was very supportive. He saw my health, and he was like, "Yeah, let's get you healthy," and then I was like, "Okay, while I'm getting healthy, I'm going to write also." And you're right, it is, like it is not for the weak. It is quite a process. Especially, like, this book is, like, 50,000 words. They're like, "We need 50,000 words," and it may be, like, in your mind, if you've never written a book, you go, "That's not bad," but it's a lot of words, and it's a lot of, like I was an English teacher, so it's a lot of editing, like, I understand that process, but I was always editing, like, 5-paragraph essays, like, it's different than, like, a whole book, so I was like, "I can do this," and my first book was actually on parenting.
Ah,
Yeah, and it didn't sell. It got rejected, and then finally, a really nice editor was like, "Listen, you're a really good writer, but nobody really buys parenting books." So, I ended up turning that book into a meditation class on Insight Timer for families because it was really about, like, family meditation and family mindfulness. And then I was like, "Okay, I really wanna write a book." Like, it's always been in me. I'm a Gemini moon, like, this is meant to be. And then I wrote this book, which I explained is my first book, but it needed a lot of work, needed a lot of, like, editing and a lot of love. And then I ended up writing Spirit Crystals, which became, like, technically my first book published, but actually my second book, like, well, I guess, 3rd book written.
wow, that's beautiful. And yeah, that is, I was counting words too, and I had to get up to words. And yeah, and lots of editing. I remember getting back, we did, was Llewellyn. It's like, Why are the notes about my writing longer than the book itself?
Yes.
What? Oh, as I don't know that I could do this, but it is so fulfilling when you do, and you have such a beautiful voice. Your words, how you see things, your magic of how you bring things. I even see that again going back into the movie, Kevin, since again you did come from a film and theater background. So, what are some of your? Do you have any favorite witches in literature or film?
That's such a fun question.
Mm.
So when I was a teacher, like you have to use these approved lists, like your district approves them. And I got really excited because on our approved list for high school is a book called Bless Me Ultima. And Ultima is a witch. And she's actually like the whole point of this story is that she is seen as a healer in the community. And she has to battle these, like, bad brujas who curse people, but the only reason why she's actually able to battle them is because she herself was a bruja, like, she was bad. She was a bad witch, and she's turned good. And so it was so fun to, like, be able to, like, teach a book that I actually really loved and talked about witchcraft and healing and, like, all of this Mexican folk magic, in the guise of, like, we're in the English classroom and we get to talk about it from this perspective, but that became, like Ultima is one of my favorite characters, and the author actually I would show the kids this interview every year, and he talked about he was writing this book, and then she comes to him,
Ah,
like, at night, and she's like, "You know why your book isn't good or not ready yet?" And he's like, "No, why?" She's like, "Because I am not in your book. I am Ultima." And then he changed the whole book and added her, and he had, like, this painting done of the vision he saw, and I loved showing that to the kids because I couldn't comment in that setting about, like, "This is magic," but they all were I'd be like, "What do you think?" And they're like, "Well, I believe him because how else could it have happened?" It was just so fun to teach that book. So she's one of my all-time favorite witches.
oh, that's fabulous. I do not know that one at all. We have again, witchcraft is very popular now, witchy movies. We have practical magic too coming out and new crafts and all sorts of things. How do you think we are being represented in the media? You think we're on an upswing, downswing, a little, you know?
Yeah, I think, we're on the upswing, mainly because my daughter's a teenager, and so I kind of like not that she represents all teenagers, but you get like a when you have one in the house, you get like a sense of what a lot of them think, you know? And
Yeah.
so I bought her a set of tarot cards, and she had them in her room. And she had this big sleepover, and all these kids are here. And they all were touching them and asking questions, and then they're like, "Do a reading for us, do your reading for us." Like, they were all so excited and open by this idea, and then, she has had, like, just kind of this openness herself because the other kids aren't going like, "Oh, you do that? Like, you're bad," or whatever. Even the kids that go to church or are very Christian, seems like they're just like, their generation's so much more accepting. Like, I remember people when I'd wear my pentacle in the '90s being like saying really mean things to me. And even like kids my own age, not just like adults to being like, you shouldn't do that or whatever, really judgmental. And I'm not seeing that. And I think that's an indicator of how like we're actually perceived because they're the younger ones coming up and coming through and like how the tides are actually turning.
Right. I agree. I see it. Again, there is positive reflection, positive influence on what it is. And again, media is helping that good, bad, and indifferent along the way.
For sure.
um, what about again, feminism? Again, we're trying because we have working against so much the feminine side of thing, not just feminism itself. We're working against bigger patriarchy than ever. So how do you think that is tying in with witchcraft in itself? Again, a very empowering female leaning, even though male, I've lots of male witch friends. We have Jason, we have Richard
Yeah.
Vale, but you know what I mean. Again, we are bringing in the goddess and all that. Do you think they're kind of hand in hand? What's going on in the world and what we need to do to balance it out?
Yeah. So yes, I think this is like my personal belief is that I believe in reincarnation and I
Me too.
believe that we choose to incarnate. Like we don't just incarnate, right? So I think a lot of us, there's so many people seemingly who identify as being witchy, like maybe not as a witch, but they'll say I'm witchy, or they'll say like I feel witchy, I'm in my witchy era or whatever. I feel like there's so many more people right now doing that or feeling that more than ever. And I feel like there's a reason why a lot of us incarnated and we're here, because I think things have to get worse before they get better. And I think we're in that stage right now. And with the patriarchy, with certain things in the news, with certain political leaders, right? Like, I think it's got to get worse. More people have to go, wait a minute, that's not right. Because it wasn't enough that some of us thought that before. And so, yeah, I do. I think feminism goes hand in hand with with witchcraft. When people say it doesn't, I have a hard time. Like, I really need them to like write me like a thesis on that because I don't really see that myself. I'm like, I need you to explain to me really in detail why you think that, because it really is empowering of the feminine. And I talk about in my book about like we all have that feminine, divine masculine energy, the goddess and God energy. But there's this like really big misconception, especially on social media, that you as if you're a divine feminine, if you want to be in your divine feminine energy, that you need a divine masculine to heal you. And I strongly disagree with that because we have both inside. And really, almost all of us, because we're in the patriarchal system, I lean towards our masculine regardless of gender. And so almost all of us just need feminine healing and need to like learn how to be in our feminine no matter what our gender is, too, because it's like we are all so much in our masculine energy, having to like put on these brave masks, having to go, even like basic stuff, like you go to a party, meet new people, like, what do you do for a living? Like, that's so masculine to ask that question.
You're right. It very much so. I agree. Ah, so let's get back to so again, somebody is whether new in the path or looking for the path. Your book, you said you have spells and this and that. Do you have a regular practice, or say if somebody's trying to get this is my favorite question, where is if somebody's going, I want to bring a little bit more of that magic into my life, an awareness, the craft or whatever it is. Do you have any like suggested rituals or techniques or thought patterns that can get somebody, on a path?
Yeah, so I broke the book up into 3 sections, and the first section is what I call, like, the roots or the foundations of, I think, any practice. So any kind of practice on the witchcraft path, I think it has 3 things in it. I think it is got like, meditation, it's got journaling, and it's got altar building. And the reason why I threw altar building in there is, because I think that it acts as, like, an anchor for a lot of people, like a visual, an anchor, it's like a show and tell of their practice. It's like really so integral. Even if you are closeted, you could be very savvy about like what your altar is. It could just be like an end table in the bedroom with some crystals, and no one's gonna know that's like actually your altar. It just looks like a little like, oh, that's interesting the way you decorated it or whatever. So yeah, I talk about the importance of meditation. I give a lot of suggestions, like if you can't sit still, if you can't clear your mind, if all of these things, because I took neurodivergence like into consideration. But for me, I noticed like a lot of people get drawn to witchcraft because they want to manifest. They hear about manifesting and making changes, and like that's why they come. They're like, okay, I really want to like manifest this thing. I want to be really empowered. But the other side of that is listening, because when we manifest, we say a spell, we do a ritual, we pray, we say what we want, but then at some point we actually have to like sit in reception and listen. And to me, that's meditation. That's when we sit and we, for listening, for answer, for guidance. A lot of people will say, like, how do I connect with my spirit guides? Like, you just have to sit still and wait. Right? Like, you just have to, like you have to give them a space to listen, because if we're just constantly, like, doing chores and, like, yeah, listening to audiobooks and never, like, having any kind of quiet time, there's no guide is gonna be able to come in and talk to you. And so that's, I think so important. And I think the same about journaling. I was an English teacher, so, like, I'm very really love journaling. But I do think there's something about, like, when you write, a lot of people process through writing. I know I do, like, I will have some feelings or some thoughts, but if I sit down and write, I go, "Oh, this is why I'm feeling this way. I see," because it all comes together when I take the time to write. So it's like meditation is like listening to deities or divinity. And then journaling is like listening to yourself. And then the altar is like your representation of your path. And I think those three things like can get anybody started. So like if someone's just like, I wanna be like, I wanna be more witchy, start a meditation practice. I know that's not as like glamorous and sexy as they were hoping to hear, but I do think it's important.
I agree. That is great. So then they get into their altar, go, oh, look, I am witchy too. But listening from the inside is great. So do you suggest little rituals like 5 minutes in the morning or this or that or things to do for people or just figuring out them?
Yeah, I tried to put, like, in the book, lots of exercises, lots of stop where you journal, like, where I ask you questions to reflect on, like, the information I've shared. So as a way of processing, but as a way too to, like my big thing is witchcraft is such an individual path that you as a person have to kinda develop the intuition and decide for yourself, like, what feels right and what doesn't. But if you've never done that before, it's actually, like, really kinda scary because people will say to me, "Well, like, how do I know it's my intuition and not my anxiety?"
Yeah.
Or, "How do I know it's my guides and, like, not something bad?" And so I do give some, like, rituals and examples of how to do that, like, how to filter out kind of the different because I do think we have almost, like, different parts of our mind or psyche.
Mhm.
We have, like, that ego that's, like, the overbearing parent, and then we have, like, the actual, like, higher self or soul self, but that gets buried under the to-do list and the, "You shouldn't have done that" kinda talk, right? So, I have some exercises for, like, developing that as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And again, the book comes out next week and they're probably available everywhere. So do you have a next book coming or figuring out what you're going to write about next?
Yeah, so when, I thought about this book. I was like, okay, so my idea for this book is we're taking someone who's like witchy or witch curious, or some people I learn view witchcraft as like a hobby and not
Mhm.
really a way of life. So we're taking people who are like interested. They're going to read this book. They'll get this foundation of like how to start their practice and like different things to add to their practice. So it's like if I read that book, what would I want next? And
Mm.
so I thought I would want to know how to live the day to day as a witch because a lot of people will say, okay, like, so we celebrate the moons. Is that like all we do? And so I'm currently writing a book that's a monthly guide. So it's broken up by months and it tells you like each month has the energy, like the astrological energy, the seasonal energy. There's stones and herbs that go with that energy. And then there's like actual like practices like exercises, rituals, meditations, and spells so that someone could like all throughout the year live their practice and feel like every day a little bit witchy.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And again, and give somebody a guideline. Where are we? It's August. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, you're so well spoken. I love your voice. I don't know how to put that into thing. What makes to you again a compelling story or a compelling what? Whether again, whether you're doing a book on how to what to do or you're living your life as such. Does that make sense to you? I
Yeah.
can word it.
Like how I kind of developed that voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I do understand. So that's actually something I would teach as a teacher.
Really.
So, yeah, so one of my passions was helping students beyond the classroom kind of like figure out who they are and what they stand for outside of their family. Because when you become a teenager is when you start going, okay, so my family believes this thing, but other families think this and other people think this. What do I think? Right. So, something I would do a lot with them is two things. One is called the Socratic Seminar, which is based off of the philosophy of Socrates, where we would read these articles that were in the news and we would discuss like educated opinions about it. So I was teaching them how to discuss things in an educated way. And the other thing we would do is called a philosophical chair. And that is where we split the room in two and I tell them like like a debate topic and they would go back and forth and argue, but eloquently. And so doing that actually helped me also develop my voice. I became a teacher at 23, so I was really young. I
Yeah.
thought it was I thought I was an adult. I really wasn't. Like, I was like, "I'm a grown up." But they really I kind of grew up, I would say, like, in teaching because it was, like, a lot of, like, when I'm teaching them, I'm also speaking to myself. I think a lot of us do that, like, we write a book or we have a podcast or we do a project, that everyone's like, "Oh, that was so good, like, I really needed that." And it's like, "Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
also needed it."
completely. That's why we're like, where are we gonna study? So that I bet you're an amazing teacher. That's all I could say. I bet you do you miss it or you just moved on to doing all that you're doing now?
I teach in our coven. We do lives once like a month. I have some classes on Udemy, and then I am branching out. I finally did my first like witchy con, and I got to teach in person again.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because there is always Zoom. I hire really good teachers in my school, University Magicus. You won't get any germs or tension, and just think about it. Because again, your voice, and seeing you, I didn't know how to word that, and you worded it eloquently. So I need to study on you. Uh, have okay, and I'm also in the very much in the paranormal world, and we watch all these funny horror films and stuff in the witches cosmos. Have you ever had paranormal experiences added into your spirituality or your witchcraft, or does that ghosty stuff ever cross over?
Yeah. So don't do this. So I'm going to share a
Right.
story about what not to do.
Okay.
So when I was a teenager in New Jersey, I was like, I really just want to see spirits. Like, I really wanted to be, I loved Sylvia Brown. I really wanted to be like a psychic or a medium. And I was like, I'm ready. Open me up. Let's go. Don't do that unless you're actually ready. So I remember doing that. And then we would go hiking. I would go with my best friend all the time to this place in New Jersey. It's called Rifle Camp Park. And there was like a tower this guy had built as a like lookout for the legend was it was like a castle tower that he built for his daughter to stargaze, and there's, like, a castle, like, down the road. And so we'd always, like, hike to the tower and, like, hang out or whatever. And we had done that quite a bit, and we go there, and I'm like, "Someone is at the tower." I say to her, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, it looks like a soldier in a uniform, and they look kind of pale, and they look sad." Like, I just, like, going and, like, really telling her all the things, and it looked very real to me. And she's, like, investigating, we're, like, looking everywhere, we don't see anything, and then it's, like, just like a movie, so she goes to the library and, like, does research, and apparently that area was haunted by soldiers from the Civil War. And so I was like it was such a awesome thing for me because I was like, I this is my first, like, ghost experience besides, like, when I was a kid, and I believe I would see things, and then my mom would be like, "It's okay," kinda thing. Um, and then to have that confirmation, like, immediately was really cool, but also kinda terrifying. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, maybe I don't actually want to be so open." That's what I'm saying, don't do that unless you really want to be open. And then later I would in college, I met my friend Jeff, we met at like this pagan meetup circle. And he's like, I like to ghost hunt. Like, do you want to join me? I was like, heck yeah. So I was in charge of like making sure that we were spiritually protected and we do all these kind of things before. And he would buy the equipment. He was older, he had a little more money. And he had found this house. So he was in photography in college, and they had this assignment that you drive so many miles one way north, and then you drive so many miles east. And it was like this whole thing. You just had to follow the directions. Wherever you land, you take photos. And so he
Yeah.
ended up at this rundown house that was abandoned. And he was like, no one's there. You can go in. And he's like, I feel something, but I don't want to tell you. I just want to take you and let's see what you see. And I'm like, Yeah. So it's like, okay. So we get ourselves like all like prepared. We're like Mulder and Scully. We got like the recordings and all this stuff to do. And we go and I feel children. Like it's very clear to me. I'm like, I feel like a little boy and a little girl. I feel like almost like those kind of, I don't know the word for it. I'm sure you do, but it's like a loop where the spirits are like on a loop and they
Right,
do the
right, right.
same
It's
thing.
called a loop, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like where they
Or
do the same
residual.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would see these kids, like, run up the stairs and, like, play around, giggle, and then run back down the stairs, and it was just, like, this loop, and I was like we're up there, and he's standing by this window that had no glass, and I'm like they're, like, laughing, they're playing. I was like they're, like, showing me, like, a cartoon, like, they were gonna push you out the window, and it'll be funny, but they were like, because 'cause they're kids, and he was like, "Okay, let me move away from the window." And so later on the recording, we hear laughter. We actually heard like children's laughter. So we just kept going back because no one was there. We were out there one day, like really looking all around. It's the middle of the high desert in Mojave Desert. It's like no one around. And this guy comes up and he's like, "Oh, are you interested in the history of the building?" And we're like, "Yeah, actually, like we're college students." We were like, "It's for a report." Totally like lie. And then he tells us all this information, how it was built out of adobe, when it was built, how there had been a printing press in the basement because we were really weirded out by the basement, all this stuff. And we're like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then we turned around and he was gone. It was like a movie. And we were
Yeah.
yeah, so to this day, we don't know, like, was he real? But it was so fun. But the most important, like, most, like, chilling part of the story is my friend would go a lot on his own. So he had gone, one day on his own, he was driving back, and we have, like it's the desert, so there's some pretty windy roads, and he was in this kinda windy part of a road, and this truck clipped his car. And so he pulls over and he's like, "Great, like, it's a hit and run. I'm gonna have to do all this stuff." And then the truck turns around and comes back, and they're like, "Are the kids okay?" And he's like, "What kids?" They're like, "The
Okay.
2 little kids in the back seat, are they okay?" And he's like, and he looks and he opens the door, and the people were like, "Oh." And then they exchange insurance and all this stuff, but we kept visiting these kids, and they went home with him and helped him on this, like, not get a hit and run, basically, like, actually be able to get insurance and all those things. So, lots of, like, fun, I think, confirmation. Years later, the house was demolished, and we were really sad because it was such a fun place to visit and, like, bring other people and try to, like, get information from. It became like a little project of ours, I would say.
Oh, that's a great story. I
Yeah.
love the kids in the back. That's a good one. That's why I love the paranormal.
Me too.
Um, anyway, well, before we go, I'm sure my people are in love with you as I am. So where can people hear your voice? Where are they going to be able tell them any your website, any social media, and of course how to get your book and your older book and your new book and everything else.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. So my website is like my name is jennycbell.com. And I have pretty much all the information on there, my classes, my meditations, and then I have a community called Our Coven. It's a private social media for witches and witch curious and pagans. And I actually have a deal for your listeners only. So if they go to my website and then they find the Archiven tab, if they go to like order a monthly subscription and join us, it'll only be $9, which is the lowest price I've ever done with the code Patty, Patti. So if you
Yeah.
use Patty's name, it'll only be $9 for the month. You can check us out. We have a library. We have classes like that are recorded. There's the best part about the coven is there's a live chat and people come in and just like show pictures of their garden. They share about their dreams. We're doing a postcard exchange right now. It's not necessary, but if people wanted to have like actual physical mail, I do a reading every month. It's just like a really very relaxing place to be. It's not like where social media has like ads, and we've talked about like people taking advantage of people on social media pretending to be us. It's none of that. It's just like very relaxing. And then, yeah, my book is for sale. I have Spirit Crystals and Divergent Witchcraft. They are for sale anywhere you buy books. Divergent Witchcraft, we are working on the audio, so that's not yet available. The physical book and the ebook are available June 1st, and then audio will be coming. I was like, it's neurodivergent people. Like, so many people, like my son, prefer an audio book to an actual like reading book. So that's coming. So please stay tuned for that if you're more of an audio book person. But yeah, you can find me on the Movie Coven sometimes. And I also just took on co-hosting a podcast called Belief Being and Beyond with granddaughter Crow. And so we get different authors and creators on there. We're doing roundtable dialogues that's coming soon where we're gonna have a bunch of people on to talk about like a hot topic. But yeah, it's a fun time over there.
I bet you guys are beautiful together. I've had Granddaughter Crow on the show as well, so I bet you the 2 of you together are just fabulous.
Thank
So you
you.
guys check it out. Well, if any final words for everybody before we let you go and we're all gonna follow you? Any funny for what to do now or life in now?
I would say, try as your best to stay positive. I know we're not unaware of what's going on in the news. But I like to keep my social media and like what I do positive as a safe space for people, like a refuge. And so one of the things that actually helps me is I gratitude journal every day. But someone taught me, and I've been doing this, do my little gratitude journal. But then each night I say one thing I'm proud of myself for doing. And for some people, that can be really difficult, but it can be as simple as I drank 4 glasses of water today. I went out and, like, put some sun on my skin. Like, it doesn't have to be like, I ran a marathon, like really simple things because it's important to fill our own cups, especially now.
That is beautiful advice indeed. So thank you so much, Jenny C. Bell. You guys check her out. Truly, thank you for bringing your magic to the witching.